Hello again, folks. KR King here, helping you to homebrew your own D&D campaign. And I've always thought that Halloween is a natural holiday to associate with Dungeons & Dragons because of its connections to the otherworldly. But also, in the United States at least, it's a holiday associated with fun activities, trick-or-treating, and costume parties. And I think that, you can present a one-shot that's themed around Halloween to your players because it also connotates some of the activities we see, the undead roaming the world, and also mere mortals ensnared in their activities as they are restlessly reacting to the fact that they can find no peace. And what I thought I'd do is use the template that I use, kind of generally to make a one-shot adventure, tying this into a holiday-themed one-shot. And this template consists of thinking about the mystery or the problem or whatever that you have in this scenario first, and then going backwards from there. Next, you have the solution or end game to your one-shot story. Then you identify the main villain, or artifact or power, whatever. Then you create ancillary creatures that surround this villain with the same criterion of powers, weaknesses, and motivations. And if you're doing this quickly, just take creatures right from the monster manual or wherever you're finding them and use those stats. Then you create the layout of your adventure. Where does it occur? What size is the area? What kind of terrain? And then you create atmosphere. And this is especially important when you're creating a one-shot for a Halloween adventure. You want to think about all those, the creepiness and the unease and dread that might happen in that kind of environment. So an important note here in terms of the definition of a one-shot adventure. This is a self-contained storyline that takes one session of D&D to play. And today we often play, 2 to 4 hours, maybe that 3-hour sweet spot. And sometimes it can be hard to fit in a really interesting story with different encounters and exploration and role-playing. I think, today it's really a 2-shot adventure. When I first started playing D&D, we would play for 6 or 8 hours straight, on a Saturday or whatever. We were much younger. We didn't have as much to do. Whereas I think today, that's not really the case. So you don't want to scrimp in terms of the enjoyment. You don't want to just wedge it in. If you're going to play, let's say 3 hours, maybe you do think of this as a one-shot or 2-shot adventure, And if you're determined this is the only time we're going to meet or whatever, maybe, get the players to agree to make it a little bit longer. The other thing is it's important to think about this one-shot as potentially being a totally standalone, independent storyline. Or is it integrated into a campaign, a long-term story that you're running with your players? And if it is, it can contain story elements that are in that long-term, or it can just be kind of a sideshow adventure. So if you think about that TV show, The X-Files, I know it's a long time ago, some of you may not be familiar, but these 2 FBI agents, investigating bizarre phenomenon, and they had this long-term story of aliens and alien abduction and the government conspiracy to hide this, but they would also have independent, they'd investigate some town where some creature was and find out what it was, and then they'd usually either, kill the creature or send it off or whatever, and that would be it. You'd never hear of this again. We used to call these Monster of the Week episodes, and very rarely would they have any relationship to the long-term story, the aliens and alien abduction and cover-up. And this kind of relates in the same way to a campaign that you're running. Because a one-shot adventure in the context of a campaign is just an offshoot Monster of the Week standalone thing. And especially here, if you're doing this, you're saying, hey, it's Halloween, I want to do a Halloween one-shot. Everybody's going to get that. They're not necessarily going to expect that to tie into the campaign. But there's a reason you might want to do that as opposed to just saying, hey, I want to get together, have this Halloween, I'm going to have some pre-gen characters, or you roll some up, assign them a certain level, and let's just run. It's whatever, wherever we finishes, that's it. Well, the issue there, of course, is that the game takes on a little different tone. Nobody has anything invested in these characters. Nobody cares. They may act in a different way. It still may be fun, and you may say, that's what I want. I don't want to risk my player character on some sideshow activity. I just want to take a break from that and run something. But let's say you do want to integrate this one-shot Halloween adventure into your campaign. One of the things you got to do is do your players have some downtime in order to go off and do this sideshow activity. And what I'm talking about is, are they involved in a storyline where they've got to go to point A or point B, or they're trying to gather things? Is there a ticking clock scenario going on? And of course, this assumes that you are tracking time in your world. And the thing is, you may want to adapt, add some little flavor if they're searching for some bunch of items for some reason, maybe integrate that into your one-shot adventure, so long as the Halloween aspects, for instance, in this case, you don't lose some flavor to that or make it seem shoehorned in. When you're trying to tie it into some storyline, you can have fun. Again, if they've got downtime or they're between adventures, it can be fun to just take a break. But again, using those characters that they've already invested all this time into. Because sometimes it can be nice to give the players a little breather if they're constantly putting out fires here or there or preventing the apocalypse of the material plane all the time. All right, so as I say, when you begin a one-shot, what I always do is think about the mystery or the task at hand, the problem first. Then I work out backwards from there. Since this is a Halloween one-shot, we're going to think that this has to do with ghosts or undead or some otherworldly apparitions or something. We're also thinking that the atmosphere, as we'll talk about later, is going to be one of dread and gloom, this horror aspect. So let's associate that with a ghost. If you have a ghost situation, the question is, why is it a ghost? Why isn't it at peace? Do the players have to come in and solve something, show the ghosts some things, right some wrong, something like that? But you could also have some artifact or some curse in an area that's causing undead to rise up and bedevil the living. So the players have to go in and figure out how to remove that curse or destroy the artifact. You can also have just a situation where some very powerful entity or demigod has created some area. Maybe it's a pocket dimension or something in which it's very creepy, undeady. The players are trapped there and they have to escape. And of course, once you have this idea, then this problem or this task, how do the players escape? How does the ghost come to find rest? And all of these things, it might involve just fighting some entity that's holding a spirit here on the material plane. It might involve gathering some items that have been removed from something so this thing can be at rest, solving puzzles. That's the next thing you want to do is you determine the problem and you say, in order to put the ghost at rest, it has to have these icons, return to its, its tomb, and then it can go off, and then all the undead will be subdued again. The idea with ghosts is closure. All right, so the next thing that you want to do is identify your main villain or victim. What are their powers, weaknesses, motivations? Why is this current state of the affairs either beneficial to them or harmful? You notice I said victim there because you may have a ghost that's trapped here and is causing these manifestations and all this undead, and not realize that it's dead or that it's under the control of some more powerful either undead or entity. Ghost is a very familiar trope for the Halloween one-shot. You can just use the stats as given in the monster manual for your basic ghost, although I think I might modify them. I had this discussion before where the horrifying visage that ages 1d4 times 10 years, for anything with a human lifespan, this is a real screw job. And you only have 24 hours. You have to get a greater restoration, a 5th level spell. If you don't, the effect is permanent. Now, I have seen campaigns where people have been aged. Just recently I saw this. People were aged, and the GM and we sort of all just forgot about it after it happened. No one ever kind of mentioned it again. As a player, I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm like, really? So it's either super deadly or not deadly at all. But I think there's a solution to this. If you want to use the aging thing, go for it. But what I would do is look back at some earlier editions, specifically the 3rd and the 4th level edition ghosts, because I think there's some cool effects that you can just give to a ghost if you want to, alter that horrifying visage. Because I think in the 3rd edition, they have horrifying visage. And what it does, if you blow your save, you lose 1d4 off of an ability score. Now, again, if this is like a charisma and you have a sorcerer, warlock, bard, if intelligence, or wizard strength, these sort of things, you choose what those are based upon the sort of ghost. A warrior ghost might drain strength or con, this sort of thing. Now the players are going to be weakened in terms of their prime stats. Then how do they get them back? If they get drained all the way down to 0, like the shadows with strength, do they become a ghost or something? Is it a greater restoration spell, or is it just resting? Maybe if you take a long rest, you get 1 point back each time, something like that. And the 4th edition Ghosts had this really cool thing called ghostly terrain. Basically, the area around them would be filled with this mist that made it difficult terrain to travel through, and everything was lightly obscured. But they also had these haunting whispers and voices in which when you entered, you make a save or you'd just be immobilized with fear. You would then be able to save in consequent turns, but whatever entities are rising up get their chance to strike at you. And another really cool thing about the 3rd edition Ghosts was that you didn't, even if you got them down to 0 hit points, you could strike them with magic weapon spells, whatever it took to hit them. When they went to 0, they just disappeared. And they were restored in 2d4 days in the 3rd edition book. I think for a one-shot, you might make that, 1d4 hours or something. I don't know, however you want to do this. Maybe it's even they just go to another area and have to come back. But the idea here is it's a ghost that something has to be done. It either has to right some wrong, freed from some force, or defeated and the wrong is righted, right? Something that enables this ghost to stay there. Otherwise, it just keeps coming back. And obviously, if you have some undead here, a vampire, again, you could just use the stats in the book. Spectre Lord or something, or team of them, whatever it is, you get there, you know what their powers are, you know why they're there. Then the next thing is the ancillary allies to this creature. So let's just go back to the ghost. It's an easy example. It has this area where it's antithetical to life. So does it attract other undead, ghouls, wraiths, wights that are surrounding this, and that they have their own motivations? They want this current state of affairs to continue so that they can live here. And here you start to think about it's a one-shot. So how many of these allies do you have? Where do the players meet them? Let's say you have the haunted wizard's tower, and you're going to have to go and free the wizard from some prison or convince him that he's dead. How many wraiths or wights or whatever do you meet on your way in? Is it one? Because then you're going to go into the tower and you're going to have some encounters there, and you're starting to think about how long are these going to take? How much time do we have to play this one shot? And this runs into the issue of having a one shot that if you have a 2-hour or 3-hour window, you might only have one ally and then the villain, because depending on how long your battles take, the level of the players and the different options, the number of players in the group. If you have a one-shot that has one encounter outside and then a puzzle and then the big bad villain and that's it, that might be satisfying. It might be better to try to think of a few more things. This is, again, why I tend to say it's going to be 2 shots, because you want the players to feel like they defeated this outside, they made it in, they had some traps that they had to do, some puzzles they solved, maybe another ally or bigger one, and then the big bad villain at the end. All right, so continuing backwards, you've got the problem, the villain, the allies, now the physical layout where this one shot is going to occur. And again, it's going to be an area that the players can travel to. If it's part of an ongoing campaign, you have to decide where is this in relation to where they are. I would say not to use any wandering monsters or anything for this, a one shot. They just get there. Same thing if you're just doing something with pre-gens, or they just roll up some people for a fun little side thing that has nothing to do with that. Just they're there. They're wherever, again, if they're outside the castle or the tower and they've got to fight a few things to get through, or they've got to fight the environment, as we'll see. So, and then once that tower is, if you have a tower with 6 floors, 10 rooms each, you're not going to get through that in a 1 or even 2 shot potentially, unless all the rooms are empty. But if the players discover, we've got to find this thing or that, or there's a mosaic that has to be fixed, something that they have to figure out with exploration, it's going to take time. They're going to have to go through this process. They're not going to want to miss something. And with a one shot, you've got a limited amount of time, even if you do 2 shots. All right, so when they enter the area, as I mentioned, how many rooms, if you've got too many rooms, or the puzzle, let's say they have to find 6 pages of a manuscript somewhere in this complex, put them back in, and then the wizard will be released from the curse, or go on to the next world. How many rooms are there? How many battles? How easy is it to find them? Do they know that, you have to find 5 pages or 4 or whatever? And, there's another thing. if you've only got this one time to do this, and you've set up something that the players have to do, whether it's defeat this thing, and this, or they have to find these items or whatever, and they're not doing it, you can accelerate things. You can say they go into this room and there is the big bad villain holding the other 2 pages. How dare you enter my thing? And then you can have your final battle. If this is especially if you're only going to do this one time, or even you've done it 2 because you're trying to have fun. The players are exploring or they're fighting things and problems arise, or it almost always takes longer than you think. You can also have allies to the players, especially in a ghost scenario. The Vizier went insane, doesn't know he's dead, haunts this place and causes all this disruption with all this undead, but his servant, who's also a ghost, won't leave his master until the master realizes this, so he's haunting it as well, but he's a potential ally to the players. So he appears in some dining hall and he's going to tell them about the pages of the manuscript or go look at the mural and get these clues. Now, what if the players don't entreaty, they just attack? That's the way your players are, and the ghost, they hack it. Maybe it does, strength drains or what with its, a servant. I don't know what it might drain or what it might do with its visage. And of course, they have possession capabilities. Would it be powerful enough? I don't know. But the point is, it goes down to 0 and disappears. It had information for the players. It had stuff that the players needed. So now they have to find that. And that's the thing is, you don't know what the players are going to do. With a 1-shot or 2-shot, you're always thinking about how much time do we have? How is this accelerating? You can design it all you want, and then you realize, oh, this is taking longer than I thought. Again, there's a chance it could take not long enough, but my thought is it usually takes too long. So you want to be prepared for that. If they meet the Vizier and he's going to tell them about the pages, you can always lower it to these 2 pages. And then we have our final category, which is the atmosphere of your run. And of course, with a Halloween 1-shot, this is super important. We know all the tropes here, a perpetual mist that's shrouding the peninsula and the Wizard's Tower. This mist is so thick it restricts vision to 15 feet. Which makes the players, and they have to go very slowly. It makes the terrain difficult and slick. Plus, it gives the monsters a chance to surprise the players. And you've got this perpetual dim light, the wind howling or moaning. You've got perhaps whispers. Think of the scene in the swamps of the dead in Lord of the Rings. These are the victims of maybe this great battle that caused these ghosts. Or these are victims of those who attempted to loot the ghosts' tower, and now they lie there in perpetual slumber until the players come and they rise. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be the cliche. Remember the witch's cottage in Hansel and Gretel. Now, you don't have to make the tower made of candy, but you could have a very idyllic scene that the players approach, where this beautiful tower surrounded by all this lush foliage, birds chirping or whatever. Now, when the players go and they examine one of these beautiful plants and they get super deadly contact poison or acid, the grass begins, they realize it's burning through our boots. The sparrows that are flying overhead suddenly swoop in, and they're vampire sparrows. Not too bad by themselves, but deadly in a swarm. But let's say you just go for the traditional kind of spooky atmosphere of a Halloween 1-shot. You want to describe all this. You want to describe the mist, the clammy cold that just seems to envelop them and give them a chill, the strange noises all around them. But you can also do some effects that are, kind of the cost of going on to this wizard's place. That the undead that are there don't want the living to be there, and so they're going to set up barriers that prevent anyone from entering their area. So your cold and clammy mist that obscures sight and makes it difficult to move could also have some damage effects. If the longer you're there, you start to take some kind of necrotic damage, or you could even have it cause an exhaustion level, let's say every hour, depending on how long it takes for the players to get there, or it could increase in effect as you get closer to the tower. The thing is, they can't take a rest in the mist, right? It doesn't negate the effect. In fact, it would make it even worse. They've got to get to the tower. When they get there, are they 1 level of exhaustion or 2 or whatever? Obviously 3 is where it gets really nasty, right? But even if they're 1, disadvantage on ability checks, okay, because another player can help them. But you get into 2 and 3 and it gets really nasty. Can they take a rest inside the tower? You can also create a dread effect. And this is sort of this, legendary or lair effect of a ghost, in which the closer you get to the place where these horrible things happened or this spirit is not at rest, it just begins to wear on you, sort of similar to what Frodo had with the ring, right? There's something about it that's just so terrible. And you have to start making saves, and maybe you have that ability score instead of like the horrifying visage thing where you start to have your wisdom reduced or charisma or something, such that when it's time to make those saves, depending on what the ghost saves for its horrifying visage, the players are at a disadvantage there. The point here is what you're doing with this is you're creating a game mechanic to reflect the idea that this place is very scary. It's creepy. The living don't go there and the dead don't want them, or if they do want them, they want to weaken them so that they can join the team and become one of their doomed denizens. So remember, set up the problem or mystery at the start of your idea for a one-shot and then work out from there, figure out what it's going to take to end this effect, to solve this mystery. Then have your main villain or victim or force or whatever that's causing the effect. What are their powers? What are their weaknesses? What are their motivations? Think about some allies that you can set up so it isn't just you go in and kill the monster. This could be traps that it's created, puzzles, but also other undead or things that are related to this ghost, other ghosts. The ghosts can also be enemies to the players. Think of the setup in terms of the physical geography of this place, how big it is, how long it's going to take for the players to explore, role play, fight battles, to make sure that if you're doing it in a 4-hour session, if you're determined to do that, you can get to the end. Be prepared to make some adjustments along the way if you have to. And if you're using your campaign setting, then what are the levels of your players? But if you're going to set it up with pre-generated or let them roll, if you're going to be 5th level, let's say, or 7th or 13th or something like that, you want to make it so that they have good battles, but they also have puzzles and exploration. And especially if it's characters they don't care about, do you want to go over that session? And don't forget to create a creepy environment, scary creatures, whatnot. This is a Halloween one-shot, and your players will expect that, so don't disappoint. And if you like my content, please subscribe, leave some comments. But most importantly, my friends, keep playing D&D and tell somebody else about it.